Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Wild, Wise and Worthy podcast. Today I have a very special guest, Ann Peterson. And Ann Peterson is a former staffer from Landmark. I'm just going to get her to jump on in and introduce herself and who she is and what she is up to today. Then we'll go deep into a longer conversation relative to that. Hey, Ann, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Kelly. It's been really a delight to get to know you. And yeah.
Thank
Um,
you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
well, I'll give you the really abbreviated version. For the long version, folks can buy my book and they get a segment of the story. But the bottom line is when I was 30 years old, so 27 years ago now, you guys got to do the math. Um, I did a program called the Landmark Forum and it made a big difference in, what I was dealing with at the time. I was in this like really not great marriage and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so like so many people, like I'm kind of a little bit in an emergency in my life. I do this great program, a Landmark Forum, don't know anything about large group awareness trainings, like don't nothing, nothing, nothing. It's a seminar. And what was funny is one of my guests it's 3 days and an evening. The evening is a guest event where you bring like all your family and friends to like check out your breakthroughs, but also to hopefully get registered in the next forum because you become their recruitment tool. And one of the guys came, he goes, I'm going because that's a cult. And I'm going to make sure you don't get trapped up in it. Anyway, less than 6 months later, I've done their whole curriculum for a living. I'm in their leadership training. My first leadership role was actually was leading their leadership training. And I just jumped in like full force. And as that progressed, I, moved kind of through the ranks as it were. And I ultimately became a senior program leader it's kind of actually a specialized division inside that organization, which is quite large. I mean, I still put it down as probably one of the largest personal development companies, not anymore, but it was. And up till the pandemic. At one time, they boasted 44 offices worldwide, around 40,000 people volunteering. They call them people who assist. So it was quite large, international training and development company. And it was the child of the S training, which was the breakout, like really, when you think about large group Tony Robbins style trainings, it all started with S, Earhart seminar trainings and Werner Earhart. So that Landmark is like what it became over time after several scandals and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, and so I come into Landmark. I don't know anything about Werner really. People are telling me, oh, you're a Landmark. That's the S thing, and that was Werner's thing. I didn't know anything about him. Didn't care. Like didn't have anything to do with me. Fast forward, I'm leading at Landmark. I've become a staff program leader, program manager. I am working though in this like rogue, I always say I was in happy camp. Like I'm working in
Happy
this kind of
camp.
small division. We were accountable for a lot of research and development. We did things like vacation programs, and they were only for senior graduates. So people who'd already kind of done the base curriculum. This was like kind of like the master class sort of stuff was sort of how we thought of it. And but what was great about it is it had a very different approach. So I have to say, I had a overall pretty good experience. It was tough. I was working 80 hours a week,
Wow.
um,
Okay.
neglecting my children. I wouldn't have said that at the time, but I do now. My whole life, becomes Landmark as it does with all of the program leaders and staff. Kind of if you're not, and I remember telling a friend of mine one time, I'm like, I'm sorry, I love you, but if like you want to be in my life, you're just going to have to come be on one of my teams because I just don't have any space for anything else.
Interesting.
So that's kind of a sneaky way that kind of cultish thing, like they'll say they're not a cult because they don't separate you from your family, but functionally they do actually. And we can talk more about that. But
Yeah,
that was
love to.
something I really to really understand as I've deconstructed the whole thing. But just back to so I'm a senior program leader, program manager. I have almost 200 people who volunteer on my teams. I'm leading, 4 and 5 programs. I'm traveling every weekend somewhere, leading a program. Um, like that. And then I didn't leave because I burned out, but I was really burned out. I mean, I would come to discover I was really quite ill when I left, but I left officially in 2012. And I got asked, my husband had just gotten a great contract job, so we had some space, and I was going to take 2 years to decide what I wanted to do next. I was really tired and really overweight, really sick, and just had a hysterectomy. I was just really not in good shape. And I would come to I have an autoimmune condition. I would come to understand that, that was what was going on. But then I got invited to host because I had this really unique set of skills. I knew how to fill a program, produce a program, and deliver a program. And by program, I mean in the landmark technology, which is considered by them the pinnacle of transformational technologies, right? And the best of the best. And I don't think it's the best of the best by any stretch anymore, but it is kind of like the grandparent because it all comes from the S training and then landmark is its evolution. I haven't met a trainer or seen their work since that isn't like, it's not that it's a directly an offshoot, but a lot of times people did Landmark or they saw Landmark or they did the S training and then they go to replicate it. They want to be that because it was the famous. I mean, they were making over 90 million a year when I left. Um,
That's pretty big
success.
business. That's pretty big business, like, back in that day there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, well, that was right up to 2019.
right. Still pretty big
So,
business.
yeah. So I ended up, long story short, this is where my book is actually about this part, kind of it tells kind of the beginning, how I got into it in my early landmark. But then I become the host. I actually set up a company, Innovative Event Management, to host a very specialized 9-day retreat about leadership featuring none other than the Werner Erhard. So basically hosted a little, I jokingly say, I hosted a little comeback tour for Werner Erhard, who had not been available it's certainly not in the United States, but not in a general way for 30 years since he left. Like he left the country, sold his intellectual property. This is the simplistic version. I've come to discover it's way more convoluted,
Yeah, more complex.
way more complex, way more corrupt and whatnot. But the simple story is he sold the rights to his technology to his employees. Turns out it's his brother and sister. Anyway, turns out he did sell it, but he basically took millions and 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 millions of dollars for the next 20, 30 years. So
Wow. Okay.
while this lived in essential poverty. So anyway, but I end up hosting this program, being a leader in the effective exercise of leadership. I hosted 9 of them, helped a couple universities host. It was all about we were going to create this new leadership technology based in ontological, phenomenological approach to education, give it away to universities. And the intention, the idea was to get universities excited and interested into this unique approach of educating people. And we were using leadership as the entree. And so I hosted that from 2012 until 2019. And that was where I was deep in the inner circle, literally working with Werner Erhard, the source, known as the source of all of it, the source of transformational methodology, one of arguably, for sure, one of the grandfathers of the human potential movement, and a group of colleagues that he never is working by himself. So in this group of colleagues. And it was a pretty extraordinary experience in a lot of ways. And that's my book really details that experience kind of year by year and all the funny foible stories and the goofiness. But over time, I come to kind of go, "Hmm,
Tell us about that. Like, what was that first sense of something that wasn't right when you started to actually yeah.
the very first one, which I totally rationalized away and ignored, was actually the first official course I hosted on my own up in Whistler. And I'm so excited. Like, I really want to, like, you want to be hosted by me because I love to spoil my team, spoil my facilitators. Like, I'm a great event producer. And I really, because I like to take care of people and I like to make it special and unique and like all that. And I set up this week, I get this fantastic, like kind of beautiful suite. And we do this buyout of this big lodge, gorgeous hotel. And I get this giant basket for each one of the facilitators. There was 5 of them. And I get this basket and I fill it up with things that are really special to them. Like one of them loved a no carb bread. Like this is 2012 before no carb bread was a thing. Trust me, it was hard to find. And I knew that Werner loved martinis. And so I get this so one of the world's best gins is made on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, if you didn't know. So I get this $250 bottle of gin. Like I do all this special stuff. And, like, he gave it away. And that I didn't find that out till later, but I'm like, "Okay." And then they, like, take this whole gorgeous suite apart, like, end up taking a lot of the knickknacks and stuff out of it, and it just got turned into this really utilitarian. I was like, "Okay, well, that's kinda." I mean, these were things that were sort of kinda, "Oh, that's kinda quirky, that's kinda weird." Okay, but he's, like, about the purpose, he's the game. About halfway through the course, I get called by the general manager of the hotel who said, "How your leader is, how your VIP, because that's how they're known to the hotel, is acting with my staff, if they do not stop it immediately and apologize, your entire group will be kicked out of the hotel."
Okay, so what was
I'm
happening?
like, "Whoa, what's happening?" Well, one of his staff had threatened, so they had asked to have his staff to be able to have direct contact with the hotel to handle their requests, which are quite intense. I mean, Landmark graduate was having intense. Well, now I know where it came from because it's, just very intense. And there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of angst, and it was just intense. Apparently, this person was threatening her and saying, "If you don't get us whatever they'd asked for, tissue boxes, da 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 da." But he got really hostile with the main hotel contact and made her cry. And this is now her manager saying, "You made, this gal who's our main, coordinator cry, and we're verbally abusive to this person, and we're not gonna tolerate that. And if you guys don't knock it off." Now this is my vendor. It's my company who's booked all these contracts and like all this stuff.
Mhm.
That was the first warning. Much later, in fact, after my book came out, I found out one of the aides, so we always traveled with a group of aides. It starts in 2018, but really 2019, 2020, a group of his staff who I had worked very closely with them. That's who I worked with to make sure everything was great in his suite and he had what he need. I worked a lot with his staff. And I really worked to take care of them because they really occurred to me at the time. I would have said they're confronted because he's pushing them to be the best they can be.
Mhm.
And I definitely witnessed later, I would witness him regularly berating them, calling, like it was really yucky. And I would say to people all the time, like, he creates a really hostile work environment. But it was my understanding that they agreed to that because, like, he's going to train them to be these elite performers. There was a whole narrative that we were given to understand this, what I would later come to realize was very verbally abusive behavior. But the first time was that. And then later, one of these aides comes to me and says, "Oh, yeah, at Whistler, he, strangled me until I
W
passed out."
What?
Yeah. So that's one of those physical abuse moves is he chokes off people's air till they see stars or pass out. Like, he's never killed anybody.
And did he have a purpose behind that, or
Having you what you need to get so that you can perform the way you perform. I mean, it's really
Wow.
I actually don't know, Kelly, if I've told this in small groups, but this is I've now had several former aides of his tell me the same story.
So
So,
he actually did that to you?
he did not do that to me. He never physically assaulted me. He had a few pretty scary screaming matches, but he never physically assaulted me. I never directly experienced any certainly physical abuse or even really verbal abuse from him. I saw him, what I
Do
now
it to
understand,
others.
to others, and there was a couple of times then later on, and most of these stories are in the book, but later on, I would hear some absolute screaming, and I realized it was one of his staff berating and name calling. I picked up the phone to call security because I thought somebody was like abusing their kid, and then I realized, oh no, that's coming from his suite. And so then I ended up, instead of calling security, I called the main aide and I said, "That has to stop, or you guys are out." Which is what I also said in that very first one at Whistler, the very first course that I hosted, said, "If this, like, you need to apologize and you need to get really clear that this hotel contract is with me." And then I cut off. From then on, I wouldn't let his staff work directly with the hotel. They had to bring everything through me or my husband.
So
And they were,
how did he respond to that clear boundary with that?
yeah, oh, they were, because they knew much later. It's not till 2020, 2021, 2022 when these guys are coming to me and then we're like having really frank conversations about what was really going on in the background, that I would come to know what the full story. But in the moment, they're like, "Okay, yes, we got it. Thank you. We're sorry."
Do you feel open to sharing like that, those particular things that they were coming forward with in the full story? Some
Well,
parts.
one of them, I'll share the ones where some of the
Endorse.
things that people have told me so that, because on the one hand, I feel it's like kind of theirs to share,
Mhm,
so I don't wanna
mhm.
step on that, but it was enough for me to go, "Whoa," and then look back and things that kinda hadn't made sense to me made sense when they started telling me, like, yeah, he would, hit them, punch them in the stomach, I actually got told by a domestic abuse person that whenever you put your hands on somebody's throat and threaten their air, that's strangulation, it's not choking. Choking is when you swallow something and you can't breathe. That is, even if you don't squeeze, if you threaten somebody's air, you're threatening their life. And it's actually now known, it was actually somebody there in Australia who works with domestic violence victims. Apparently, there in Australia, they did a really big study and found out that the number one precursor to feminicide is strangulation.
Okay.
At least in the laws there in Australia about that in domestic abuse, because they've discovered that that is like kind of the it's a warning sign that somebody could hurt somebody to the point of real maiming. To my knowledge, I don't have any knowledge of Werner hurting somebody to the point of,
Death.
sterilization or whatever. I wouldn't, if somebody came to me and told me that had happened to them, I wouldn't, really sorry to say I wouldn't be surprised. But
What do you think that the reason behind that he was acting in that manner was? Just the
I
control
honestly,
factor or
no, I think it's impulse, to be honest. I don't think
Mm,
people who engage in that kind of, it's straight up what they describe to me is like domestic abuse. Is he was abusing the his staff, because his staff works in his like living space with him. They work they he's always, and if you start to read, this really great book just came out by Marsha Martin, who was with him, was one of the first employees of EST back in the 70s. And she describes the whole environment. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was working with him in 2012 and it was kind of the same. Like a
mhm,
lot didn't. So there was a whole 60 Minutes thing that came out where in the 1990s, this is what had him flee the United States and turn his company over to his brother and sister. All of that was because he was being taken down because people were speaking up. One of his top managers was talking about, having harming people to impress Warner, which is one of the things that happened. I just think all of this stuff is just pretty much how we understand it in domestic. It's impulsive. It's somebody who has too much power, probably has narcissistic personality disorder, very likely is sociopathic. I don't, any of those things you can't get close enough, but he meets all those markers. By the way, Miscavige, the guy who's currently running Scientology, I was talking to a
yeah.
Scientologist, they're like, yeah, he beats up on us all the time. Like, it's really common. Basically, they lose their temper, you're incompetent, you're an idiot, and whap, you know?
It's almost like it's a reverse attribution, like they turn it around back to the person but then layer in, like, the doctrine, and I call it they leverage shame and guilt, and so you become the person that has created or caused the effect, so therefore, it's
Yeah,
your
that's always, I mean, you see that in domestic violence all the time, right?
yeah,
You made
gaslighting.
me hit you. If you hadn't, done XYZ or you'd done what you were supposed to do, then I wouldn't have had to do that to you.
This is really interesting to me that it's actually inside of a transformational company and a transformational organization. This begs to, then we look at the methodology or the system that was created from that particular person. How can then the methodology that is used be transformational?
Well, I think you got to understand. So I think what we're looking at with these leaders, whether it's Werner or Miscavige or whatever,
Mhm.
like they are people. Okay. So they are people. I actually think I don't actually have any people tell me like, "Oh, you have a big axe to grind with Werner or in landmark language. You're incomplete." No, I don't. I actually kind of have some empathy for Werner, to be honest. And I don't condone what he does. I think I challenge him in my book to make it right because he could. It would be a shot heard around the world if he literally followed what we used to teach in the Landmark Forum, which has come out, and we used to jokingly say, anything you say after I have been such a fool, it'll turn out. Like, own it. And I think that he's
Yeah.
ill And I think all these guys are ill in some form or another when they get to that level. But I think they should be held to account. I think there should be, it's great where they are. Keith Raniere is in jail for 120 years. That's
Mhm,
where he belongs and what
mhm.
he did. Definitely, there's lawyers have been consulted. The stuff that Warner's done is considered, assault. Great bodily harm. There's other things too, the stealing of their wages, all kinds of stuff. And I think there's one court case that's still in motion, but mostly they've managed to quash them and kind of use the legal system to hide and cover up. And okay, so that's a whole set of kettle of fish. But to me, the other side is why would people like me, one, I didn't recognize verbal abuse when I saw it.
No,
It
no.
was very easy for someone to say to me, it's a training method. He showed us this full metal jacket video of a sergeant screaming in a face. I had been indoctrinated that transforming people was the highest mission, and that may require these methods of, harshness and so on. But I still never saw it as abuse until a lawyer explained it to me. Until a lawyer goes, no, no, this is abuse. This is assault, verbal abuse, physical abuse. Like, I had to have somebody explain it to me in legal terms before I even knew what I was looking at, what little bit I saw. But mostly I was asking to try and understand what was happening to these people that I cared for. But here's the thing, we're never going to get rid of all the predators. I don't think that will stop us from trying. I just think we should be honest about that. But we can educate ourselves so that we recognize predatory behavior. And one of the things I've learned from John Atack, who I just really appreciate a lot, and I've learned a lot from him and listening to his show. But he quotes how Trump, for example, talks about there's two kinds of people: there's predator and prey. And John says this great thing that I'm signing up to, which is no, it's just not that simple. There's some predator, there's some prey, and then there's the rest of us kind of wandering around in the
In the
field.
middle.
And we're just trying to live our lives, and we're just trying to be more effective and more productive and better communicators, and we're seekers, we're learners, and that's why we go to these courses and programs. But these guys have figured out how to use that desire, that natural desire that we have to learn and grow, to not only manipulate and control, but to exploit. That's why the subtitle of my book is Confronting the Line Between Transformation and
Yeah.
Exploitation.
I have to agree
So
with that too.
they're
For myself, being inside of what I understand to be a large group awareness training and, the C word as well. And maybe for my listeners, we can just step back a bit and look at how we can actually educate ourselves to have an awareness. And I'd like to start with, what is a large group awareness training? Because that seems to be the languaging that is out there today for these particular programs that are transformational workshops, transformational experiences, or breakthrough experiences, also known as large group awareness trainings. And some of like you mentioned, we're the people that are in the middle from the predator prey parameters as such. But we go to these things as seekers, yes. We're wanting something or we're needing something to, fulfill something that we may be dealing with, like an emotional thing. Like you mentioned when you first stepped into Landmark, you were going through some issues.
my life when I was looking for help.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another thing, it's self-help. So we're looking for help. So we go to these easy, accessible industries and we believe that we're getting the help that we are needing and wanting. Our dopamine is being affected by that. And, this is a whole other thing that I'd love to go down at another time relative to the addiction creating responses that these organizations are actually creating to keep us hooked into it. But going back to what would a large group awareness training look like so that my listeners and other listeners that where they're going
Yeah,
in,
there's some key ingredients, and the name is kinda unfortunate. I can't
yeah,
remember the
Algat. Who thought of
coined
that?
it. Well, why I think it's unfortunate is because it kinda might like, a lot of us who have come to understand that we experienced what amounts to harm in
Mm-hmm.
there's big scope, there's a big range of harm because we also experience value, right? But there's like a big range. But here's some of the key ingredients. So there probably is a group, doesn't always have to be large, but part of the group dynamic, and that's what we used to call it in Landmark, because the group dynamic makes it so you can sit in your chair and you never have to share, you never have to say anything, but you're going to see yourself in others and you're going to transform. because the group, but what they don't, I think they even don't understand, willfully or not, but is you're also, a group puts in an ingredient of social pressure.
Mm.
So the things that shows up in these groups you'll see along is a confessional kind of setting. Like the people who get the most appreciation, attention, gelation are the ones who share the deepest, darkest, most icky thing, which actually it works the same way as we understand. Like we now understand torture doesn't work. Why does torture not work? Because people will say whatever to make it stop. But the same thing works on the positive side. People will say whatever
To get
to
attention.
be to be like, to be whatever, right? So first of all, so the group part, that's the group sets up that environment. Then there's a couple other key things that you'll see in these kinds of trainings that make them a little bit dangerous. So the other is they're typically very concentrated. So they're going to be long hours, probably in tight quarters. Like, in other words, you're kind of sitting there side by side, landmark forms are set up. You don't have tables. You can't have water at your chair, but not coffee. There's long sessions where they're droning a lot of information. So there's a lot coming at you. There's a kind of cognitive overload that happens in part by just the hours, but also the word salady, very intense, very esoteric
The jargon.
content. Yeah. And look, because I can speak both sides. I mean, I could defend all of this, right? I know all the defenses. There's a certain terminology, and every profession has a term, doctors, da da da. That is very different than word salad. Very different.
Can you just explain, like, that what word salad is for my listeners?
Word salad. Let's see if I can find it.
It's kinda
There's
like
words.
jumbled.
Basically, where you take two paragraphs to say one sentence. That's how I always think of it. It's like this long, convoluted, like, roundabout way, and then I always go like, "Wait, did he just say, like,
What
something?"
what did I hear?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that caught my attention, I wanted to do a marketing campaign for Being a Leader one, which the title of it was Being a Leader in the Effective Exercise of Leadership, a Ontological Phenomenological Model. You will leave the Being a Leader course being a leader, not knowing more about leadership, blah, blah, blah. I had this whole thing. So I wanted to do this goofy, silly ad campaign around phenomenological and ontological, which are words. It
Mhm.
cracks me up. Sarah, she's become a friend, and she always like, that phenomenon, blah, 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 blah. And it is a real study.
Yes,
So
and
anyway,
epistemology.
yeah, I get this whole like landing page that I've kind of started, and it starts with the actual definition. And I was going to do these funny videos of people trying to pronounce the word and like whatever, right? And because I did most of my marketing after 2014, it was all internet marketing. And so they're like, "Okay, but you gotta run it by Warner, you gotta run it." So they, we're whatever next call with Warner we get on, and I'm like going through it, and I have this landing page, and I have phenomenological and ontological. I have the probably Oxford Dictionary definitions of the words like on this landing page. Well, he immediately starts going, "No, no, no, that's not how we define them," and he starts redefining the words. Now, at the time, I really have one thing in mind. I'm responsible for making sure there's 250 people in the next course and raise a certain amount of money because that's what. Oops, sorry. The whole thing was about raising money for this educational initiative. So I immediately, within 5 minutes of the call, know my campaign is dead
You knew it.
because he's going to do it, and he's like, I'm not going to put out like whatever. But I dismiss all that. Like I don't. I'm just like whatever. My campaign's dead. This is one of Warner's quirks. That's how I saw him at the time. Well, later, when I learn about word salad, redefining words is a big red flag. If the English language is robust, there
Mhm.
is no need to redefine any word, especially in English. Every English word has 19 definitions already anyway. If you can't say what you want to say with English the way that it's designed, you're up to something.
Mm.
So to me, it's not just how we reuse words, but that thing of redefining words. Like by choice, what we mean is, or context, what we mean is. And then this long, convoluted, like, I mean, as staff, we would have hours and hours and hours defining words, which I would later come to find out was a big Scientology thing. So as well.
Interesting. The same playbook throughout these things.
So long-term awareness trainings, it's probably going to be a group. It's going to be intense hours. It's going to be a lot of information overload. There's rooms are set very carefully, but I don't think that's even a requirement really. It does happen, but with more reasons for that.
That's interesting to me because I experienced that. The rooms were set really tight. The parameters were, the chairs had to be a certain distance apart from each other, had to be in a certain pattern. It almost had to be symmetrical. We were told that we needed to control the energy and create like an energetic space in that.
Behind control groups. So large group trainings tend to be taught and used in groups or organizations that are into high control. They're controlling.
Did you have temperature settings like controlled too as well, like the air conditioning?
Yeah, 72 degrees.
Yeah.
My understanding as the producer was because that was the temperature that worked for Warner,
Mhm.
not because of any like, I never got any whiff in all the years I produced courses. Now that it was to cause something in participants. I've heard that since and from some other people who participate in groups like this. What we thought we were doing is we were creating an impeccable environment.
Same.
An environment that communicated and called for your attention. And I don't think that's not true. I think that probably is true. I think, Kelly, I don't think this stuff is as conscious as we wish it was. Think,
I I have to agree with that because yeah, it was like, okay, this is what happens, and, I'm being challenged with the temperature, I'm being challenged with the tight space, but this is part of transformation, and I'm also being challenged with like, the long hours that happen, but this is part of transformation. If you wanna be a great leader and you wanna be successful, this is what great leaders and successful people have to endure, and so it's kinda went along with it, but
well, what you're doing right there is you're describing it perfectly. Especially if you're a seeker,
Mhm.
and you're there for something, you're up to you're going to rationalize whatever. And here's the other component in these trainings. They're giving you permission. They're giving you rationalizations. Like when Warner showed us the video of this drill sergeant screaming in the face of this fat, kind of overweight recruit about a jelly donut, he was actually creating a permission structure for us to understand what he was doing when we saw him scream at his staff.
that's really
So they're
interesting. It's almost biomimicry that we're then given permission to do that ourselves, and it's part of the facilitation process while the leader's
it's
demonstrating that. Pardon?
It's part of manipulation. Look, it's
Mm,
happening all over the world right now. I mean,
mhm.
I'm in the United
Yeah,
States, which is a total muck up to say
yeah,
the least.
yeah.
But, it's a propaganda war for permission structures for all kinds of insidious and terrible things. Those people are criminals, because we got to get the criminals. We now have people on the streets. We have in the United States, like I can't even tell you how shocking it is. We have masked men grabbing people and throwing them in vans. But we
Yeah,
were
that's bad.
publicly being given a permission structure for that. Well, they're just getting the criminals. Well, we now know 71% of the people who've been arrested have no,
That's
right?
really interesting. Really
That it's the
interesting, that pathology.
So I'm in a room, it's tight spacing, I'm cold, the hours are long. But see, I've been told at the beginning it's going to be rigorous, it's going to be intense, how you think is going to be challenged, you're going to be tired, you're going to understand like your limits. You are so much more than you think you are. You're going to be able to go physically, mentally, emotionally beyond your limits. So I've been given a permission structure.
Mhm.
And then that's coming at you, coming at you, coming at until you literally in Dr. John Hunter's book, The Dopamine Hypothesis, amazing, an absolute must read. If you want to understand this, how they're literally shutting down the prefrontal cortex, because you get into information overload, you're exhausted, you're cold, you're hot, whatever your flavor is. And and then at a certain point, you're like, yeah, wow, I really am an asshole and my life doesn't work. Okay, I got it. And and da 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 da. And then usually on the last day, there's some kind of a breakthrough or the
Yeah.
famous S thing. Got it? Got it? That was famous in S. Got it? Did you get it? I got it. Did you get it? And pretty soon you don't want to be left out. So even if you didn't get nothing, you're like, yeah, I got it. What'd you get? Oh yeah, me too.
Yep.
But I get stuff like I did get in the form. I'm like, oh wow. Yeah, I have this. I actually remember the advanced course, which is the second course more. That was more impactful in terms of like what I would say breakthroughs that to this day, 30 years later, I can kind of recite, which is, I was a teen mom and I got that I had this whole story about how my life was gonna go because of that choice, and that was it, and that was all I had available to me, and I got that as a story, like, not as a fixed truth. Well, that's pretty damn cool, and I've had a pretty amazing life from having got that. Now, I've talked to enough therapists, enough whatnot to know that that is a really common idea that is used in all kinds of therapeutic settings, in all kinds of different ways. That's the other thing about these groups. They take ideas that have real value and real validity. Nobody gets into these groups because there isn't good stuff there.
True. Very true.
It's just we don't realize the dangers. I mean, it's just like, I love
So
chocolate cake. If I eat too much, it's bad for me.
very true. So let's look at what are some of the dangers. But first of all, I want to, what is transformation? What does transformation mean to you?
That's such a big question.
I know a bit, but it's put there. It's put there in these places. That is your guiding light. Like it's your, North Star to get to.
Forum.
Yes.
So here's what's and it's so funny, I've become very, very good friends with an old S trainer who was actually part of creating was an S trainer who was part of creating the forum. So there's this big transition in the early 80s from the S training to what becomes the forum, and then that transforms a few more times, but really it's never transformed. Anyway, his name's Ed Gerwitz. He's amazing. He's become a good partner and friend, in part because he's one of the only senior leaders that has come to me and gone like, okay, you're onto something. And he's now read more cult books than me. Like he's amazing. And so he and I have had this argument like pretty much consistently for a year. What the hell is transformation? Because he wrote a book and the title of it is Transformation from Potential to Practice. And he gave me an early draft and asked me for my feedback. And he took a lot of my advice, but one piece he didn't take was to change the names so that it didn't say transformation. So there's a couple things. When we hear transformation, I don't care what anybody tries to tell you. What we hear is change. I'm going to change. I'm this way. It's not working in my life. I'm going to do this program 3 days in the evening and I'm going to come out being this other way. And all my problems, at least in that area, are going to disappear. So that's the stated and implied promise. You're going to transform. Right. So, and there was a whole definition of transformation they had on board in the course. I literally am very happy to say I can't remember it. Shelton taught me the number one way to start deconstructing is stop using the language. And it does kind of work. You end up
Yeah,
forgetting.
I have to agree with
Cool.
that, totally.
Oh, it's awesome. But
Stop the
so
interjects.
now I think how Ed talks about transformation is actually much more what was originally meant, which was more a space or like they always use the butterfly analogy, right? So a butterfly goes from caterpillar to butterfly, but that's a long process. To me, the more people I talk about it and really dive in, because I've asked that question you just asked me of like, I can't even tell you how many like trainers now, because a lot of them defend it, still. And I think I don't know. I like the idea that we can transform, but what does it mean really? And what Ed will tell you is it's practice over time in community is what requires transformation. And that transformation itself is that shift. To me, it's like a mindset shift. I go from seeing it this way to seeing it that way, which does really open up a lot of possibilities. So if I see myself as somebody, I'll just use a big example that a lot of I got in the forum. If I see myself as somebody who's unlovable, it's pretty hard to love me. And if and this is what I do think is available in somebody's course. And I left the forum kind of going, oh, maybe that's a story I made up. Maybe that's not true.
Interesting.
Could. That shift, that subtle shift in how we see ourselves, maybe how we see the world or we see people in our lives, to me, that shift in view, that is actually transformational
And
because it
then
just opens up a whole scope of different possibilities that literally wouldn't have occurred. Like I could walk right by them and not even see them because I wouldn't recognize.
interesting. Do you think too as well, when we're in that space of like opening up the potential, and let's layer in the human potential movement here, opening up that potential of infinite possibilities, then something can be placed in there as
Right. Like it could be implanted, right? So that's
mm,
like the Sunday, 3 day and evening
mhm.
about Sunday of, did you have a breakthrough? Did you get it? Did you get it? And the old joke about the S training was fundamentally you got that you were an asshole and your life didn't work and you were the source of that because of how you were relating to yourself and everything in your life. The forum watered down version of that. to this day. So that has some value. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think, I mean, the part of why I nominated myself to talk, other than I couldn't tolerate knowing about all this abuse and not saying anything, but I felt complicit if I didn't say. I also
There's an
committed to
interesting
being
there's an interesting component here of, I'm feeling into that we're at cause, and we had the languaging around that, the law of transparency and reflection. And so anything that you actually attracted was something on the inside that you hadn't actually seen in yourself or loved, right? It was your unconscious that needed to come conscious. So the external world was actually filtering that to you to learn to see it and then to integrate it, and then you would have a transformational experience, a breakthrough experience. And we would call it your owning, like owning your shit, right? Or owning it. And so from my perspective, that
percent responsibility, right?
yeah, exactly, right? That it all comes back to you. And therefore,
Exactly.
any kind of what we label as abuse on in the external, you are at cause for that. And so
So
there
ding, ding, ding. This crossed the line
mm,
from value to exploitation.
yes. Okay.
You just crossed the line from transformation to exploitation.
Perfect.
And gross overuse of that fundamental idea, which has been around for thousands of years, like it's
Mhm.
in Buddhism, it's,
Mhm.
all this, like what you just spoke to is taught in many spiritual teachings in different ways. Find with these groups is they cherry pick these little pieces and bits. And then, and part of this is the fault of the way we have created this kind of economy where you have to own something so you can sell it, so you can survive first and then get rich second, right? So that structural system calls for a lot of abuse, right? Because I gotta make something mine. So I take these universal ideas and then I shave a little piece off and put a little piece over here, and then I put that together and I go, okay, that's my technology. Now
Mhm.
my technology is going to transform you. But you just made the switch. You just demonstrated it so well. So yeah, I mean, psychology, and we know that we're always seeing through a filter. Well, what creates that filter is our past experiences. I mean, this is a very basic psychological principle that, you know, if you understand neuroscience, I'm in this advanced neuroscience coaching program right now. I'm learning a ton. It's so great. But we have a library of things that we develop over time. I know this is a glass because I learned this was a glass, right? Like, so we have this whole library of things. So I see something comes along, Kelly makes a grumpy face at me, and I'm like, that means I've been bad. She doesn't like her. Does it really mean that? No, it might mean Kelly's nose is itching. I don't know. That is just such a basic psychological thing that goes on. Now, these groups in Landmark, we would have said, like, there's what's happening and there's what you're making it mean, right? That's really cool to notice, like, ooh, Kelly made a scrunchy face and I'm making it mean she doesn't like me. Then I can go, Kelly, do you like me? Are you mad at me? I could actually intervene in that, right? And do something differently. That's really powerful. But then when you do that, okay, gosh. And I had somebody tell this to me. They literally got hit by a city bus and they went into the center and literally, they were okay. Like they just got knocked down. They didn't get run over, but they were kind of banged up. And their seminar leader says to him, well, who were you being that you got hit by a bus? Now that is weaponization. That's what weaponization of those ideas look like. It's out of context. It's out of place. We have control. I had this realization the other day that the fundamental lie of the human potential movement is that we have total control. That's just such bullshit. We have control over very, very little. We have control over one thing and barely that, which is we have some control over how we see something, how we relate to something.
How we
But what
feel about
control do we?
something.
Yeah. We don't even, most of that is happening to us, but the only time we have control is when it comes up into that, what do they say? Consciousness is like 2% of our calculating power.
I find it
And I
really,
go,
really interesting that this is the part that is leveraged in, I feel, in these organizations. And we had a saying that if you had like an injury or an accident, that was jury from within. So in jury meant jury from within. And you attracted that because you were so self-righteous. You were so self-righteous that you needed the universe to provide you hubris to bring you back to a state of equilibrium and balance you out. And my direct experience of having that happened to me. Like, my husband was killed in a car accident. And 7 days after, I was at an event and had a fellow facilitator look me straight in the eyes and say, you attracted that, you caused that, you've got work to do. So, this in itself is something, it is
That
crossing the
is
line. It
what
is crossing the line uh,
absolutely.
into exploitation. So that kind of leads me into,
Like, I mean, this is me saying this. This isn't as, I'm not a trained psychologist, but to me, that's like psychological abuse. Or can we swear on your podcast?
yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Otherwise, mind fuckery. Like that. So, but it sets you up. Like in the moment, sometimes it feels powerful because the brain loves certainty. The
Yeah.
brain loves having an
Yes.
explanation, a reason, because it calms down the brain. It calms down the ego that's only job is to keep us alive in life. All of that calms down in the moment. But then now we're living in this world that is a massive clusterfuck. And I'm over here going, well, and I have no power to change that really. I have no real power in that. And I'm like, suffering because I'm seeing people being hurt. I'm seeing people be locked up. I'm seeing, and I'm like, whoa. And I have real, no, really don't have power over that. So you didn't have power over what happened to your husband. Happened to your husband happened to your husband. You were deeply impacted by it
Hmm.
in profound ways, but you weren't the source of it in any way, shape, or form. And to say that you are sets you up for a kind of psychological downfall because then the next thing you get, whether it's something as little as you lose a job because there's a layoff or I don't know, a city bus hits you or somebody breaks up with you or whatever, you are always to blame. How are you not permanently victimized in that, like, it gives you this false sense of control that is just so disconnected from reality that
I found that there was a nuanced part within this as well, that the victim mentality was leveraged. There are no victims, there is only lessons, was a constant aphorism that was playing. And so therefore coming back to that sense of self was like, well, I don't want to be a victim because, that's not okay. Yeah.
I wrote I wrote some articles on my Illuminate platform about this, about how the vilification of victim has
Mm,
led to some really dangerous places, especially women.
hmm.
There's a point where you need to be able to say, "I was victimized." Because how else see, not being a victim, who does that help?
Who does it actually, yeah, what leverage does it give to that?
It helps the perpetrator. It helps the
Absolutely.
predator. Because and then people have completely lost sight of that model, Cartman's model, which is about social roles and how we roles that we place ourselves in interpersonally and in relationships, and it's kind of been expanded. But I mean, I grew up with I saw my mother as a victim, and my whole life was about not being a victim, and I got myself into all kinds of dangerous situations actually because of that. And there are a few people that probably should have been held to account, like I should have called the police that I didn't because, well, I chose them.
Yeah.
I said yes to, yeah, you can come in my house. I said yes to, that date. So it's just completely devoid of any real understanding of human psychology, coercive control, like all these things we're coming to understand now. And,
And
I'm
that is the confronting the line component of understanding the locus of having your own sense of control and critical thinking, and where that line actually then gets leveraged in there to be able to put up a clear boundary, a safe boundary, and say no to certain things. Yes, there is lots of studies done now on why people, not just women, but people cannot say no because of the associated attachments, the associated addictive components, and
they'll rationalize away the most horrible abuse.
mm,
And mostly those rationalizations are being given to them. Well, you made me do that to you. "Oh,
again,
I
cause,
did."
yeah,
Yeah. "Oh, I did." And it's really powerful to be able to say, "You know what? That asshole victimized me. They lied to me. deliberately tricked or manipulated me. They da 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 da. Wow. Okay. Now I've got a place to stand to actually hold that person to account. But then I can very quickly say, I love David. Can't believe I can't think of it right now. Ted, The Empowerment Dynamic by David Emerald, which gives a whole really fantastic way to kind of moving from that Cartman drama triangle into like, the victim becomes the creator. And you see that all the time as people heal, they become advocates for other people who were victimized in those ways. But if we don't have the freedom for just a little bit to say, that was wrong. And I didn't do that. They did that,
Yeah. Yeah.
whoever that is, and make sure it's a real person, not the big old they, right? But wow, they lied. One of the big things, one of the big landmark lies for a long time was that Warner gave the company to the employees or sold it for $1. Well, as part of a court case, a bunch of us were just kind of looking around for stuff, looking around for some truth because we realized we'd been told a lot of lies. And we'd been not told a lot of things, like a lot had been deliberately and forcibly hidden. And we're kind of like looking around, we find this court case and we literally found the purchase and sale agreement between Warner and when he originally sold the technology. And it's like for $18 million, not a dollar.
Right. That's a good lie.
For the whole yeah, like this whole big age thing. Now, okay, right, if you wanna say, okay, he deserves that, because he invented this incredible technology, which no, he reorganized a whole bunch of smart things, which I think he deserves some credit for, sure, okay. But the staff are living on starvation wages. The staff is like
Yeah.
literally eating sugar and crackers because they don't have enough money to buy food. They're living in, apartments with 3, 4 people because you can't afford rent. Um, you know
That's exploitation again in a different sector relative to the underpinning these associations.
I have people say to me now, they're like, "Well, that's everywhere." And I'm like, "So that's the excuse?"
Yeah.
Like, no, once I started to be able to see exploitation as exploitation, I do see it everywhere. And you know what? We should stop it.
We
We should.
should, instead of using generic dismissiveness to go, "Oh, I don't want to feel it, I don't wanna know it, I'm just gonna dismiss it." Yeah, and that
Yeah. Our
that is such a like a human I'm not gonna say it's such a human construct, but it's a part of us that we don't want to, like, go deeper into being an advocate for something and standing up. And this is something through the conditioning of what I've experienced too, like, that I struggle with every day. And there's something that you mentioned there earlier around, the triangle where the victimized person, the victim then becomes an advocate. And what gets thrown in my face? Well, you're just a wounded healer and you haven't dealt with your wounds yet. So you're projecting that upon others. So it comes in every direction. And I'm grateful now that I can see these things and understand, well, that's what's being said here.
well, part of being a wounded healer is saying, "You wounded me." That
I love
those
that.
deceptive
Thank you for saying
practices
that. Yes.
Those deceptive practices, those lies, those normalized exploitive systems, they caused harm to me. And you know what? Wow, they caused harm to me. Like they're part of healing is being able to say, and this is where Ed Gerwitz in his book, his transformation book, he actually posits another triangle, which is he calls the transformation triangle. But his counterpoint to victim is confronting the facts. And I really actually like that but I can't confront the facts if I don't say, I've been victimized, that those people lied to me. That person deliberately set out to trick me or manipulate me or gaslight me or, wow, okay, well, that's what that looks like. All right, well, facts. Well, the facts are, I should maybe call the police, depending on what the situation is, right? So I had a police officer one time, this guy was doing some very, very bad behavior around Landmark and basically almost forcing himself on others, but all inside this anyway. It's just hard. Anything I say about it like sounds weird. Like you could get it because you've been in groups like this
Mhm.
where there's rash.
Mhm.
Basically stalked me and to have sex with him until I finally said yes because I figured if I say yes, he'll go away. Which ladies, that's bad, 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 bad. That didn't work. Only at 30 years old do you believe things like that. Anyway, and in the 90s, so now we know how wrong that is, and anyway, he was pulling all this stuff with a bunch of other women. Well, somebody who was much smarter than me called the police on him when he tried to wouldn't let them out of the car trying to get them to give him a blowjob or some crazy thing. So this person calls the police. There's this big investigation. And I have to say, Landmark, in my opinion, at the time, and I still think actually handled it pretty well. They sent the head of HR came up because it was all happening inside of one of the Landmark assisting leading program. But they call the police and the police officer comes over to me and he's like, hey, well, do you feel like you were assaulted? And I said, well, I can't exactly say I was assaulted because I did say, I mean, I didn't want to, I didn't want to, but I said yes because I figured if I did, he'd go away. So is that assault? I don't know. And this poor police officer, he's looking at me because you could tell he just wanted me to say it because then he could investigate or act. Right. But unless I said, "Well, I was stalked." Like, he kept following me. He'd show up in the middle of the night, he'd follow my car, he'd knock on my door in the middle, like all this stuff. And he was a leader and a coach, so I deferred to him a lot, and we hear these stories in yoga communities all the time, like, or some guy was just arrested a little while ago because he was having sex with all these women, saying that if his penis was like a magic transformational wand or something.
Jeez. Okay.
But I get it, don't you get, like,
Yeah.
how when you're inside that set and
Mm.
everybody's going along and you've been convinced that you have total power and you're 100% responsible, and then so someone's, like, manipulating or coercing and you agree or you say, "Yeah," and then you go, "Okay, well, I did that." Well, who's that helping exactly?
True. Very true. This is really, really leading me into we have the exploitation part that we've clearly sort of discussed around here. And I love the fact that this is in your book. And I recommend to my readers, listeners to read it. Is many large LGATs, large group awareness trainings, they promote these life-changing results and transformations, but there is a crossing of the line that tends to happen inside of it. And we also have participants that actually come in that, may have mental health issues or psychological issues or a history of emotional issues. Um, so I think moving forward, I found like in the organization I was in, we didn't have any screening processes for these particular things. And the method was just going to take care of all of that anyway. So moving forward, I think what would be some really good things for safety and screening and like psychological readiness for, the self-help industry to step into? Because, I love self-help too. And, I am an advocate for assisting people through difficult times as such. So I'd love to see.
Have access to
Mm,
therapy for so, like, United
yeah,
States, right? We don't have you have to be pretty well off to have access to therapy. You have to
true.
be either really, really destitute or really well off. You get the
Hmm.
middle. I mean, it's a little easier now with the online therapy groups, you can get therapy for $90 a session. Hey, a lot of people can't afford that, and therapy can be, it's not like that whole field doesn't have abuse and exploitation in it as well, so
True.
I think this is where, and this is how you and I met was through the organization Seek Safely, which I was really blessed to be introduced to in like 2021 or whatnot. I was in the middle of like, I had all these people coming to me, telling me, well, this handful of people around Warner coming to me and telling me about the abuse. And they were really coming to me because I kind of really took care of them. So I was a little bit of a mother figure. So they would come to me and they were like, can I just ask you, like, is it normal for like you're a business owner that he had this whole thing with pay refund, like where if you pissed him off he'd go, oh, you owe me, because they were all contractors, so he'd say, well, you should be paying me to do your job, and so he would like levy a pay refund which had a certain dollar amount attached to it, and then there was somebody whose job it was to keep track of all these, and then at the end of the month, like sometimes these people owed staff owed him more money than he owed them because he also paid him, like, the structure was basic starvation wages, right? So then they had this whole crazy system where they would work out like, well, here's enough for your rent money, da 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 da. Like some people left his employee like owing him big money, and then they would forgive it or whatever because the whole thing was bullshit and not legal.
Right.
And we took it to I said, "Well, you gotta take that to an attorney." Like, I wouldn't that doesn't sound right to me, but go find out from an attorney. Well, they did, and the attorney said, "That's domestic slavery."
Okay.
So so now, okay, all right. So I write about that in my book and whatnot. Imagine my shock when my book comes out and all of a sudden I start getting calls for the next year. So my book came out in March of 2023. For the next year and a half, I'm getting consistently every week calls. It was really heavy duty for about 7 months from staff and program leaders of Landmark, not Werner, of Landmark all around the world with similar practices happening in Landmark, which I had no idea was happening. And that was like super heartbreaking. So I'm going through all this and I'm just like, what I thought I had given my life to was clearly not it. Like it was just so heartbreaking. And then I got introduced to Ginny Brown, who's the founder of Seek Safely. So seeksafely.org. And I met her and it was like this huge lifeline because Ginny lost her daughter in a spiritual warrior camp, put on by James Arthur Ray in 2011. Her daughter, Cree Brown, and two others died in a very pseudo kind of fake version of a sweat lodge. And they died. They literally dehydrated to death in the desert. And well, that's the worst thing that can happen
Yeah.
at a self-help thing, is
Yeah.
somebody died.
Yeah.
And lots of people have done we have since found numerous complaints, lawsuits of people who have experienced harms after doing landmark. They have a psychotic break. And I knew some of that was going on. My husband was a center manager. He had a whole protocol for what happened if somebody in the forum didn't sleep enough or had some kind of a psychotic break, which we had a few highly entertaining stories anyway, of people who kind of went nutso doing the forum. I now know they had that going all the way back into the S training, and they at different times did try to set up protocols and things, particularly things like, in Landmark, you fill out a form and that form says, if you have a mental health condition, we recommend that you not do the forum. Da, 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 da. It even says if you have bipolar disorder, we recommend you not do the forum, blah, 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 blah. Well, but it's completely up to the consumer. And then you usually have a staff member sitting there who has a target to meet and is under enormous pressure. So they'll talk to you. And if you seem okay, they're like, well, we'll give you an exception. Or, and usually they have to take that up the line or whatever. Or if your doctor says, or what, I mean, they try. I do want to give Landmark some credit because I think they do really try to do a certain level of screening, but it's not exactly disingenuous. They also, their targets are more important than their screening
True.
in the pressure the staff is up. So anyway, I meet Seek Safely or meet Ginny and, her family. I went up to the last time they held a live event and just, I flew up and participated because I'm like, they don't know me, but I want to collaborate with them. I want to partner with them because it was the only place I heard people talking about accountability and solutions in the self-help field that also respected that self-help was important because I had experienced enormous value as a program leader. And I've also had lots of my past participants call me and say, Anne, I want you to know you really did make a difference for me.
Right.
I went to the course, it was great. I've actually gotten reconnected to a lot of people I hadn't talked to. So it's the line, there's lots of good stuff, but there are harms and we have to stop pretending there's not. So that's the first thing. Just
Well, that part there is, yes, full disclosure on the potential risks, right? I call them full disclosure on the possible contraindications of attending of that. And I didn't see any of that. I didn't experience any of that.
nobody talks to you about any of that, right?
No, no, none at all.
I run a workshop now in partnership with Seek. So Seek and I,
Mhm.
we work together creating workshops. So, and I changed the whole focus of the company that I had just set up in 2019 called Illuminate Life. It is now Illuminate Life. It is a learning collective committed to the safe and ethical practice of self-help and wellness.
Beautiful.
And we're way in the beginning because I'm going really slow because I want to be able to say that with,
Mm.
and what does that really look like? And the first thing I see is practitioners really need to educate themselves about the dangers. If I called up the head of Landmark right now, who's actually a pretty great guy, I have to say, I really like him. His name's Mick Levitt. I think he's actually a great guy. I think he's totally indoctrinated and and I think he's also been lied to. I think he ended up being CEO without knowing all this stuff that was going on in the background. This is my hunch,
Mhm.
maybe some. we'll get to have a conversation and I'll learn different. I don't know. But he doesn't, if I said, do you know that the forum is a large group awareness training and that large group awareness training is dangerous? Now, maybe since I've been harping on this publicly for a couple of years, now he might say, yeah, I do. And here's what we're doing to mitigate that or whatever. But for years and years, and never, like practitioners, facilitators, trainers, coaches, they don't understand their own work a lot, especially if they've only been trained inside of an insular.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing is practitioners need to confront the dangers, the possible dangers of their own work and stop because they have a good heart and they have good intentions, thinking that that means nobody could ever be hurt. That's just not true. You can have, they need to get trauma informed. There's
Yes.
no trauma training inside of Landmark that I'm aware of. There might be now, but there certainly wasn't during my time. So, other than kind of the woman who trained me, like she taught me some stuff that I could now look back and call like, oh yeah, she was teaching me like, if I saw certain things in people's coursework to understand there was probably an issue of well-being and you should never confront that person. Like you should let them kind of go at their own pace and things like that. But again, the division that I worked in was very different than most of the Landmark. Most of the trainers will have never heard stuff like that.
So I think it's
Very little.
really getting clear on, like you mentioned, the trauma informed side of things. When you have a person in front of you, understanding what you're actually seeing, what you're perceiving, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing with that person, and distinguishing whether you are having a moment of like emotional collapse or is it a true breakthrough? One of the things that we were taught is that, you're going to have a breakdown before you have a breakthrough. And so,
You have to. No pain, no gain. That's another one I'm out
yeah,
against. Like,
but I've learned to realize now, like I've come to understand that that is potentially dangerous for somebody that has CPTSD, that it tips them into, like a state of undoing as such.
here's another thing that we teach that I've done 2 safe practitioner workshops. I'll do a couple more next year. We have
Mhm.
a recorded one available for people who wanna see it. And it was really cool because we had like 40 people on who came from all kinds of, they were into plant medicine, they were leading honestly, large group or small group awareness trainings anyway. And it really in there, we went through the Seek Safely practitioner promise and said, okay, wait, what does it look like in practice, in our business, in our teaching, like that? And but another area, so practitioners don't know what they're looking at, don't know how to interact with it. But the other big one is when you do, when somebody comes to you and says, you know what, we had a guy in our Being Leader course who was part of MI6 or something and had done despicable things and was really like feeling suicidal. And the only thing to say to that person is, let's get you connected with a health professional that can help you
Yeah,
with that.
referrals.
My technology isn't, or I hate the word technology. That's a whole bullshit term. My methodology that I'm teaching here isn't actually designed really to help with that. So let's get you with a health professional who can really support you. And then down the road, it may be that my methodology may be sort of when you're in a more stable
Mhm.
place. But the first thing you need to do is make sure that you're really safe. So that we have to, practitioners and then consumers next, we have to learn ourselves, like, what does the dark side look like? What is it? But really, not so we can just fix it, just so we can understand, wow, that's where I am. Like, I think maybe what I'm dealing with is clinical depression. And doing a weekend training can be dangerous if what I'm dealing with is clinical depression. So let me talk to a health professional that can tell me what I'm really dealing with. And then, even if I do a program like the Landmark Forum, I'm doing it with the right support. So one of the things that you see in a lot of these groups is that my methodology, my technology will cure all that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was definitely what I heard as well.
I don't care who it is. If it's a religion, a politics, a wellness group, walk away.
Yeah.
Walk away.
Yeah.
'Cause you are about to get snookered. Another really hidden harm, actually the biggest hidden harm I think is relates to this, which is you get distracted from getting the help that you really need. I did a great interview with this
Yeah.
really great guy, Brian Arbor, who was a soldier. And he would come to understand that what he was really dealing with was PTSD from having been deployed in Afghanistan and some different things. but he kept going to Landmark. He was a staff member, but he kept going to his Landmark work to try and work on something that his Landmark work is not designed for. And nobody in Landmark told him, don't do that.
Mm,
That's well
it is a problem. That's a huge problem. One that
with top people.
yeah, that is a huge problem. If in the look at the standards that are in the medical industry and, the psychology industry, even the somatic experience industry, they have regulation controls. So this industry is not regulated in any way, shape, or form. And there doesn't seem to be any informed consent that goes with that. So do you think that we should start to work towards some form of like regulation?
Absolutely. So Seek Safely has been sponsoring what will be the first consumer protection bill that is aimed directly at the self-help industry
Mhm.
in the state of New York here in the United States. So it'll be the first bill in the United States that is directly about and directed at self-help and wellness, and it's years in the making. They are one step away, one step. So it's past one side of the New York state government. It needs to pass the other side. In fact, we're hoping the representative who's been sponsoring it will join us for the Seek Safely Summit that I'm going to be hosting
Perfect.
from November to January.
Mhm.
So to come and kind of give us an update. But there's also laws. There's a lot of things we can do in the meantime. We can strengthen our laws to understand, to bring in what we now understand about coercion. So most laws, particularly criminal laws, coercion is you have a loaded gun to my head. Okay, I'm coercing. Your life is in some way threatened. That is coercion. But we now know there's a whole level of psychological
Yeah.
coercion way before that kind of obvious and direct threat. And so we can start to strengthen our laws. We can start to expand our, one of the big problems we have here in the United States is the statute of limitations. So most people don't, who've experienced traumatic events or trauma from some kind of typically abusive or, harmful behavior on the part of another, will take 7 to 10 years to even be to the place to say, I think that person, that thing that person did harmed me.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Rachel Evan Wood has an amazing little documentary out called Phoenix Rising. It's 2 parts, hour and a half each. It's hard to watch, and I think it should be mandatory watching for particularly for teenage girls, young women, but really for everybody, because there isn't anybody who could not find themselves in an abusive or harmful or high control environment where they are doing things, giving up rights, everything from giving up rights and sovereignty to actually putting themselves in the way of harm. There isn't anybody that couldn't fall into that somewhere, some way, and probably has in some degree on the spectrum.
We
So
we do like in Australia, we do have sort of like industry standards, but it's not through like a body that covers self-help or self-development or the human potential movement. It's actually through the business side of things. So we have it ASIC, which is Australia's, like consumer protection as such. So there is a right of being able to make a complaint there, but it only comes back to like a monetary kind of thing. Like if you,
and it's a tough thing. Jean will tell us at the summit, she'll tell us about how one of the most challenging things in getting this bill passed has been defining self-help.
yeah,
And
interesting.
then but here's the other thing that I've learned from her that I think is really great. Yes, we need stronger laws. Yes, we need ways to hold predators accountable. But that's what happened. It's already kind of too late by then. That's when the worst has happened.
Yeah.
James Arthur Race just under 2 years in jail for the death of 3 people.
Mhm. Yes, too late.
And that's too late. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't have it, right? I think the stronger thing is educating practitioners, which I have a triangle, I put that in the middle. And then at the bottom, educating consumers. So understanding as a consumer, well, what is a large group awareness training and what exactly are the dangers? And I may still choose to participate in it, but now I'm going in not only informed, but also like I know how to protect myself.
Perfect.
And I would, later in my career, I knew the forum was very notorious. The Landmark and its forum is very notorious for its totally insane recruitment, which is at the end of the forum, you're like, if you love this and you want to keep it real in your life, have all your family and friends do it too. Leverage the transformation you just experienced to have you invite others. Okay, don't do that. That's another thing. Exploitive.
Mhm. Okay.
So leave it alone. Like there's this great book, Referral Engine, that says actually trying to manipulate people to do that actually gets in the way of what's a really natural thing. Like if I use a product and I think it's super awesome, I'm going to tell my friend Kelly about it. Let that flow naturally.
Yeah.
Stop trying to, put a blowtorch on that and like make it like, no, just let people do that naturally. You don't need to say, okay, that transformation you just experienced, it's going to go away unless you have your friend Kelly do the forum too.
So
Like,
in final reflection, like what else can awareness do with this? And what would be like two big red flags that you would want to, bring to the forefront of awareness to any person that is either in some kind of organization that is classified as an LGAT, large group awareness training, or they're considering actually attending one of these human potential, self-help, self-development, personal development events?
for sure, anybody who says they have the answer to your I actually in the Safe Practitioner workshop, I one of the things I said, stop promising people outcomes. You have no control over the outcome. Promise people feature and benefits. Tell them
Mm,
what you're going to be doing. Let them decide what they're gonna get out of that. Stop watch the twin flames thing. Like, that guy, he's insane, but he promised everybody would find their twin flame, and now he's doing, like, completely insane things because that's the promise of his thing. I mean, he's having people have sex change operations and getting
wow.
downloads of who's insane. It's insane. That's a number I think that's probably the biggest thing for me is anything if I go even to a website and it says, "If you do my thing, you're gonna get XYZ," I'm out. Unless it's something like I'm going to teach you about Excel spreadsheets and you're going to, in my thing, you're going to leave having a deeper understanding of Excel spreadsheets.
What
Okay.
is the number one thing that when you went to that website, like I call it, what did you grok in your body? Because I noticed that we can have like a perception, but if we really feel it and we get a red flag of that feeling, like it's a sense of danger that's instilled within us, like in that moment, like what did you feel in your body that there was like, no fucking way, I'm not going there?
Yeah. Well, I think it's in part because of all the deconstruction I've done. So I've seen that thing. But I like what you're pointing to because that'd probably be my second thing now that you said that is if anything in your body or your awareness, your consciousness goes, trust that.
Yeah.
Pay at least explore it. At the very least, because we do have a pretty your body knows way before your mind knows. And that's it's can be overly alert at times for sure, but we've often trained ourselves to dismiss it. And that's what a lot of that you said earlier, you brought up the whole thing, you're gonna feel pain, you're gonna get confused, they're giving you instruction to dismiss all your body warnings, to dismiss your somatic and mental, no, like it's okay to stop the action and say, "You know what? I think I'm gonna take more time and consider this." Do your read now. Like, we have research available that was not available to me in 1995 when I did the form.
We sure do. We absolutely do. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity like to have this discussion. And one of the things that we brought up was around the seeking safely with the Seek
Right, right.
Safely crew. And so you mentioned a summit that's coming up. Like I just picked up on that. Do you
Yeah,
want to
let's do
share that with the listeners so that if you want to be informed, this would probably sound like a great place to actually go to?
it's a great place to get connected. So we're in the process right now of shifting the date, and I'll make sure you have the link. You can put it in the show
Hmm.
notes, but gonna be January 10th, and, it's just a one-day right now, it's a one-day Zoom summit. We are hoping to raise money to actually bring it back to a live event, and, it's for practitioners and consumers
Perfect.
alike, anybody who has a stake in or an interest in the self-help or wellness industry that is ready and willing to confront that there are dangers and that the best solutions are the ones that those of us in the industry, we can start providing our solutions. We do not need to wait for the law to come down on us or some professional organization to get created that we all sign on to. Like, no, literally workshop by workshop, coaching engagement by coaching engagement, we can start to create a safer seeking environment. So that's our theme this year is building solutions.
Perfect.
And that's what we're talking about. We're going to be
Yeah.
focusing on healing solutions, legal solutions, educational solutions. We have an amazing, John Atack will be there, Chris Shelton, Rachel Bernstein. We're working on a really cool, we have a whole legal section where I can't say yet who we're trying to get there, but it'll be exciting.
Perfect. Can't wait to attend that. And where can people get your book?
Amazon is about, I know
Yeah,
they're evil, the evil giant, but they are the most accessible. So I did it myself. So I mean, I didn't do it. I had this fantastic publisher that teach me, but it's like, I know I'm like, oh my God, I got to put it on bookshop.org so I get
cool,
away from
cool.
Amazon. But right now, probably the best place, and you can get it anywhere in the world.
And
And I did it. Click the button, have it available on Audible too. So it's available on Audible.
okay, cool. And where can people connect with you if they are exiting or having issues coming out of a high control environment or have any questions relative to LGATs? We'll put everything in the show notes.
Book. So the name is this occultbook.com is a little website I made around my book, and I've got some resources on there. Any button you push is going to eventually is an email button or whatever is going to lead to me. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and it's quieted down now. So, but I try to respond to everybody because I don't know. We just got to come together. I think. I mean, I think our power to move our society beyond a usury exploitive thing is actually here in us coming together and recognizing, I think that's a problem. How can we do better?
I have to thank you for that for me too as well, is when Glenn Doyle actually connected us and I reached out, like Anne and I have had a couple of conversations. It's definitely that coming together and being able to be heard and understood and being able to communicate, the things that occurred. That was very helpful for me. So I just want to say thank you for that, for you being available to them.
Another evil giant use
Yep.
Facebook group called Is This a Cult Book Club, which is kind of code for telling the truth and healing. And anybody who thinks they've experienced these kind of environments, and just even if you just want to come listen, or
Yep.
come just read or ask questions, like, whatever, but don't go it alone. I think that is probably the biggest thing I'd want to leave people with. Don't It doesn't go away. The If you were part of a group or relationship and you feel like something was wrong, something was wrong. Explore it, heal it, then you can move on. But you can't just walk away, because what'll happen is you'll turn around and you'll walk into another. You might not walk into another abusive group, but you will probably walk into a high control or narcissistic relationship. You might end up in a job. There's lots of work environments that are really not healthy. So unless you deconstruct it and heal it, you'll just get another version because you don't know what you're looking at.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom. Very grateful for that.
It's been great to get to know you.
All right, guys, thank you for listening. And I just want to say, if you have any questions, please reach out. Any part of this actually is triggering to you too as well. Please seek some sort of professional help from your health practitioner as well. Myself and I know Anne will be available for listening if that's something that you feel. Please reach out. Until next time, guys, we'll see you then.